Okay, we're back with a new project. So, all of what you see here in front of you are parts that actually came from an old set of computer speakers. So these are extremely old, in fact. Um, they came from, well, not extremely old, but they're pretty old. They came from an old computer that was in my parents' house. Now, think I remember when we got this computer, I think I might have been maybe 15. And this set of speakers just traveled around from computer to computer that they had until eventually they decided to get rid of them. But so they gave them to me because they thought, well, I might have some use for them. And I wired them all up and tested them, and they actually sounded pretty good. So it was a standard old school computer speaker. I didn't take any pictures of them before I disassembled them, but I'll throw in a picture. You can see it. Basically, it's standard affair. It's got two sort of MIDI speakers, which would be the standard old school computer speaker style, but it also came with this big old subwoofer in it as well. And the sound out of it is actually pretty damn good. So I decided that to make them more useful for me, because I don't really have a space to put these, and they weren't great. The MIDI speakers, because of the size of the little enclosures on them, they don't really sound great either. So I decided I was going to take them all apart and I'm going to build a new box for them. So it's just a single speaker cabinet for the lot. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. There's three speakers, a left and a right channel for the tweeters, and then a subwoofer. It's got this big old control board here, which is just lovely. It's all it looks to be all hand soldered through hole components. Um, has a big, massive buck converter on it, um, and then a couple of potentiometers which turn on and off switch, the volume and also the gain for the bass. So yeah, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this all together in a test bed framework so that I can rewire everything, because I have to cut some of the connections, make sure it all still works. Um, and then after that, I'll make the full enclosure for it. So I reckon what I'll do is I'll make it the front panel and the bottom panel so that I can mount the speakers to it and mount all the power supply and everything and leave it all open for testing. I'll wire it all up. Once I'm happy with it all working, then I'll just enclose everything. So yeah, that's what we're doing next. Yeah, you guys can watch along. Okay, so I've made a bit of progress here. I'm sorry I did most of this all off camera. In fact, no, I did all of it off camera. Sometimes you just have to work that way. But basically, I took pretty much all of those components that you saw in the last section, and I put them all into these two pieces. So I've got the front panel and the base panel made up, and all the stuff is mounted down. So you have the main control board, the power converter, and all of the speakers, of course. And they're all mounted with knobs and stuff. I've got a little barrel jack here, which fits in here, and I've got the main on-off switch as well, and they all nicely fit in here, including the power LED, which I'm quite happy with. So it's straightforward enough, just a little bit of very rough and ready carpentry, cut some plywood to shape, rooted out some pockets in the back here so that the surface mounting components, or the panel mounting components, will fit through there nice and easy, and they do. So there's a little bit of work still to be done, because you can see here this can still just wiggle around on its own, so I just need to retain them. Probably simple as a little bit of hot glue will do the job. But the next main thing to do, now that I have everything fixed in its final positions, is I need to wire everything. So I have the original wiring harness here, which basically, so this guy used to plug into the back of the subwoofer, and this parallel port is pretty much all of the signal for all of the different speakers. So this splits out in two, and it would connect to both the small tweeters and also to the woofer as well, and there's a whole bunch of different connections on here. So what I want to do basically is I need to take this wiring harness, cut it down to size, and wire everything internally. I'm going to use the same harness just to keep it handy with using the parallel port. So I'm going to rewire all of this in together, and hopefully it'll all just work. So One other thing actually as well, yeah. I changed the input. So the input previously was hardwired, and it was this male 3.5 millimeter jack. So you'd plug that into the audio out port on your computer, and then that would drive the whole thing. I want to make this a little bit more useful for other things as well. So I've moved to a 1/4 inch standard audio jack, female. So that's going to panel mount onto the front here, but I need to rewire some of the bits from this. And also, I'm a little bit terrified of testing this. So I can plug it in, and assuming nothing explodes in a puff of smoke, that'll be the first test, really. If that doesn't happen, I still don't want to connect anything valuable to this. And with this being my only way of connecting to it, I'd have to just plug it into, my laptop or something. So I think my laptop is about the only thing that has a 3.5 millimeter audio jack on it these days. So instead of that, I managed to dig out this little guy. And this is an old auxiliary Bluetooth module that I used to use in my car when my car didn't have Bluetooth built in. So you used to be able to just connect this to the 3.5 millimeter jack of my phone. And then I could, so Bluetooth to this, this would connect to the auxiliary input in the car. And then you Bluetooth to this, and then you could play your music. So because this has a 3.5 millimeter jack on it, I'll be able to plug this into the whole thing using a slew of different adapters that I have. But anyway, the whole point is that if this little thing blows up, I don't really mind too much. I'm not hard wiring my laptop into this thing for it only to fry my laptop or fry the audio card in my laptop, which would also be annoying. So anyway, that's the next thing I have to do. Start redoing all this wiring. You guys can watch that. I promise I'll film that.
So one of the first things I had to do was to desolder a lot of the old wires and connectors that were off the main board for the controller, and also things like the speakers, and a few other components that had some old wires and connectors on them. I was considering that I was going to maybe patch into those old connectors and reuse them, but I thought it was actually just easier if I kind of clipped wires away and stuff and just used the existing traces on the board to connect up all of my new wiring that I was going to need. The main part of the wiring here that's kind of changed is the input jack. So as I talked about earlier, it did have a standard 3.5 millimeter male jack that you would plug into an audio socket, and I wanted to change that to a 1/4 inch audio female jack. So that's what I'm doing here. It's basically just taking all the wires that were connected to the old input and just rewiring them here onto the audio jack. Pretty simple. It's just 2 wires for the signals, left and right, and then 1 ground wire, which I looped around the 2 signal wires because, it looks pretty that way, and apparently that makes it better. Now, I'm no audiophile expert, but honestly, I don't think it made much of a difference here, but it was a handy way of just keeping all the wires neat and tidy for when they were going to go into the case later on. Again, this is just removing some of the old wires from the little speakers. These are kind of a little bit of a pain. Basically the way they work is you looped a little bit of wire through, and then you kind of crimp it, and then you put a blob of solder on it, so it's kind of hard to undo it, but I got there in the end. One of the other tasks I had to do was take the original wiring loom and sort of split it down to a more reasonable length so that it could fit inside the case easy. And then I was basically going to take all of those wires, all the old connectors, and rewire them. So this is the main wiring bundle, and it's kind of a bit funny. There's a few different signal lines going in here, but this is what is like basically a shielded cable, a shielded audio cable. So it has this strange metallic sheathing that's wrapped around all of the cables. Now, what that actually is as well is that's the ground for the whole thing. So when you connect these into all the connectors on the end, you can check the continuity between the pins on the parallel port for this thing. And the ground pins are all wired onto that sheathing. So this is to basically prevent noise and external signals from influencing your actual audio signal. So they're typically wrapped around the signal cables, and then that provides some audio isolation, and it also doubles then as the ground because it is itself conductive. So I had to wrap it all up to rewire it. It took a little bit of time to remember how I disassembled it, that there were actually ground wires, and then I was trying to figure out exactly where they went. Last little bit of soldering here. Basically just had to extend a couple of the connectors. In this case, I decided not to desolder from the board because the connectors were kind of just a little bit finicky, so it was easier just to cut a new length of wire to extend. I also didn't think I'd have to extend this, but it turns out the spacing was a little bit different to how it had been in the original one, because the box is a bit bigger, so the knob is further away from the board. So I just made some little wire extenders and did the quick and dirty a little bit of heat shrink with my soldering iron to make them all electrically isolated, and yeah, that worked absolutely fine in the end. And now it comes to, this was the first power up test, and there we go. We have the green light. Nothing blew up, which was a massive success. That was not connecting any audio to it, just turning on the light to see what happened, twisting the knob to make sure nothing then blew up subsequently. And yeah, at that stage, I was confident enough that the electrics were all working, but hadn't actually tested it.
Okay, it's a few days since I was last recording. I had to I dug out this little Bluetooth adapter module thing, but there was a slight problem with it in that it only has a 3.5 millimeter jack, and I needed a 1/4 inch, so I had to actually wait for this little adapter guy to come. So I have that now, so I can test it out. This guy is paired with my phone already, so all I should need to do is plug this in, turn on the power switch, hit play, and we should have music. So I have my microphone on a little stand here, so I'm going to move the microphone as close to the speakers as I can to try and give you an idea of what the sound is like. I don't know if that's going to work out very well, but just to give you an idea of what it sounds like. Might not come across well, but we'll see. So anyway, let's turn it on and just see, do we get sound out of it first before I'm talking about the audio quality. Alright, I'm plugged in, so turn the power on. Nothing's blown up, so that's good. So I'm gonna hit play on my phone in 3, 2, 1. Oh, we have sound.
I realized afterwards that this is actually copyrighted audio, so unfortunately I have to mute it here, but wait till later on and you guys can hear the sound quality then.
All right. So that definitely works. Really happy with that. That's great. And it sounded pretty good too. And that's also, you have to consider, that's an entirely open speaker enclosure, so you're not getting the full resonance out of it. The volume of air that's inside this enclosure as well is going to be much larger than the original volume that was inside the subwoofer compartment alone. So especially the little tweeters, they had basically no air volume behind them in their tiny little enclosures before. So I think when I build out the box for this, I think it's actually going to sound pretty damn good. So that's that's a success. I'm happy with that. It sounds way better than I thought it would. Um, so I suppose with that built, this is all of it pretty much done. I just have to build the enclosure and then call it a day. I'm now torn between, do I make it pretty or not? Because it's not very pretty. It's just plywood. And when I finish it off, it'll all just be plywood, so it's not going to look very nice. I have this thing in my head with my projects where either they're just completely ugly, but purely functional, or else I try and make them pretty. And I'm not very good at making things pretty, to be fair, but I might try with this. So I'll build the enclosure anyway, and then if it sounds really good with the enclosure, I think I will invest and make it pretty. Do some proper finishing on it and make it look really nice. But if it sounds only all right, maybe I'll just leave it. It will be a functional piece anyway, and I think it will sound pretty good. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. The next step, I'm gonna make the enclosure, and you guys can watch.
So for the last few little bits of this project, I've tidied up all of the wiring inside the case, and now it's time to actually enclose the rest of the box. So it's pretty simple, just some basic carpentry, measured out some pieces of wood that would match up to form the top and the back. They all have the two pieces basically that happen to be the same length. And I need to cut them down to size and then assemble them. It's really basic construction, just using some wood glue and a brad nailer. And yeah, that's about it really. Just I figured what I wanted to do was I wanted to make the back and the top pieces first, just sort of work with that piece of rigidity. And then it turned out that I actually didn't have enough plywood for the rest of it, so I had to wait a couple of days to go till I managed to get out and buy some more plywood for that to finish the top. But in the meantime, I was able to start making this little cutout at the back. It was really simple, just for the cable. Added some strain relief later on as well, because as you might have noticed there, the strain relief that I did add at the start wasn't really good enough. Those little cable clips I had were for larger cables, so they didn't actually work for the smaller power cable from this. So once I had gotten my larger piece of plywood, I was able to mark out the size for the sides. And then it's the exact same thing, just a little bit of wood glue and a few brad nails, and that was pretty much it. Went together very, very quickly, and the whole box is really, really solid, really strong. So yeah, don't imagine I'm going to have any trouble with it falling apart anytime soon.
Okay, so the speaker cabinet is finished. So I was debating whether I was going to make it look really pretty, and I still might, but there's a bit of stuff that I don't really know how to do that, and I think this video has kind of gone on long enough, and it might be a while before I actually come back around to do it. So the main stuff I've done, I have obviously all the fittings on. I've added these little metal corner covers, which I think are kind of nice. I've also put it on some little vibration isolating rubber feet. And the final little touch, I 3D printed a little bracket here on the back that you can wrap the cable around. So it's nice, it's easily portable. Little corner covers should give the box, a good bit of strength and protect the corners from impact and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I smoothed out all the rough edges, so there shouldn't be any splinters or anything on it. So it'll be fine, and it does work for what I need it for, basically. The thing that I don't know how to do, which is kind of what I might like to do next, is maybe like cover it in sort of like fake leather or vinyl or some stuff like that, which apparently also the specific types that you use for covering speakers also help with the acoustics of the speaker. I'm not really certain exactly how that works myself, but yeah, so that's kind of a bit of something else to learn, and maybe I can do that in the future if I want to. But honestly, as just a really quick monitor I can just plug in to just test any sort of audio thing, I think this will work perfect for me. So I'm really, really happy with it. But earlier on, so I turned on the speaker earlier on and I was playing some music. But yeah, I realized that obviously I can't just play copyrighted music without permission just to show off the quality of a speaker. So I had to go off and find some music that I could use freely. So I have that, courtesy of my good friend Darren. So yeah, I'm going to turn it on and give you guys an actual listen of the speaker sound quality. It's not incredible, but to be honest, for what I need it for, it's way better than, it's more than what I need, and also it's way better than I expected it would be. So anyway, I'm going to click the button and you guys can listen to how the speaker sounds. I'll move my microphone in closer. Okay. Here we go. Adjust the volume, and I can adjust the bass as well, which is kind of cool, so I can thicken out that bass if I want. And bring the bass right down too. It's quite thin without the bass. If I add the bass in, well, this part isn't particularly bassy, but it does help round out the sound. There we go. All right. So yeah, that's basically it. My speaker's finished. It works. Sounds not too bad in my opinion, and yeah, it'll work pretty much perfectly for what I need it for. So yeah, that's the what I need it for. Next plans to basically start working on some modular analog synth projects. So I'm basically planning to try and design my entirely analog synth from scratch. Um, and this bad boy will come in really handy when I need to plug stuff in to, make sure things are working and sound right and stuff like that. So that's all in the future anyway. That's all coming. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little project. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. And yeah, if you're into this DIY audio stuff, well, hopefully I'll have more of it coming in the future for you guys. And so yeah, I'll leave it there, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.